That overblown sound is really neat.
Yeah, there's I know a lot of people say nu metal is back, but there's a tasteful element to it. I know it's almost like if MCR was a nu metal project, and I know a lot of that sort of almost like electronic influence. To my guess, came through Aaron. If I remember correctly, he was one of the first, or if not the first, engineer for Left to Suffer, and helped with a lot of their early work and production, and just is a really incredible producer and engineer, and really I think knows what it takes to pull the right sound out of a band who may have 80% of it together and is just missing that extra little thing. And I think a lot of that difference in the sound that Sister Sleep has now, as opposed to before, was totally in part to their work with him and what he's been able to bring out of them. It's not just, hey, write this or make this better for us. It's, can you push us to be better? And sometimes all that takes is saying, hey, you can do better.
Well, and to me, too, I think that a big part of that is not only having a good producer, but having the right producer. A producer who shares the vision that you have. Because you could have an amazing, just absolutely killer producer that just doesn't quite have the same vibe as you, and it's not going to work out. And so, like, with those little, the couple of, like, glitchy edits in the guitars and, like, that kind of stuff, I feel like all of that feels very, like, intentional, and like everybody was on the same page as far as how that needed to go.
Aaron pushed us to work with Corey, and it's something that we, weren't apprehensive about, but just you trust someone for so long and you're comfortable with that. It's sort of like what we were talking about earlier. You can find redundancy in that, and it's important to get pushed out of your comfort zone. And we've always respected the work, not just but respected the work that Corey has done with Dowboys and Seder, and that's very much more in his wheelhouse is our sound. And a big part of our transition from that was Aaron telling us, hey, this is the right person for you.
Well, I think what I was getting at too is that at least in my opinion, the telltale sign of an absolutely great producer is when they have the balls to tell you, I'm not the right person for this. You should go to this person because this is more in their wheelhouse. Because I think that, like, a lot of people would go, yeah, I could probably do that and, take the paycheck or whatever. But if somebody is really in it for the art and they're like, I can't do this as well as somebody else can, I think that that's the sign of, like, a truly great producer.
For us, in Cascadent, that was a big part of our recording process. Was we've been tracking these things since, I want to say, the end of 2021 or so. Maybe even before that, we were living in-house and tracking them with a roommate of ours, David, who started the guitars with us and did a large portion of them. And at that time, we just planned to do drums with Corey, and we were going to do the rest with Aaron. Fast forward to Aaron telling us, hey, you need to go do the rest of the record with this guy. We go there and we do vocals, and we find out that we go back and we need to do a bunch of guitar work. We need to do a bunch of redubs or reworks, overdubs, and we were put in touch with Greg Hindler, who was another local sound engineer here out of the Atlanta area. And when we started working with him, just had this incredible demeanor, but super organized and professional, and we sent him this just mess of files and guitar tracks, and because we didn't really necessarily know what we were doing in all aspects of it, and one aspect is organization.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And, a few people we had sent it to took one look at those files and were like, no, you move on, pass. And I don't blame them, but we sent it to Greg, and without any type of payment, anything, any incentive, was like, hey, I'm going to clean this stuff up, tell you what we are going to need to rework, and then we'll talk about pricing. And immediately I was like, pay him whatever he wants. This guy is incredible. But a big part of what I'm getting at with this is all of these producers had all these different specialities and everything, but they knew when to let go at the right time. And that's what ended up benefiting this record so much, was that we were cared for so much by these engineers and producers and promoters and people who have really helped us out along the way, but no one was very possessive over it and knew when to say, hey, you can move on, you can do this aspect of this, maybe not better or worse, but more in alignment with your vision with this person. And that's been one of the best parts, is having that collaboration. It's something that we had talked about in starting this record and just sort of ended up happening regardless, just due to circumstance.
I was also going to mention on just this song and the production of it, I absolutely love the bass tone, especially in the second verse. When it's with just the bass for a little bit. It's so gritty and punchy.
But it still has that melodic and groovy element to it.
Yeah.
Shout out Chase.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's one of the things in heavy music that can be the hardest, is to get a bass tone that has good low end, but also has a nice bite that blends in with the guitars. Because to me, the bass almost just acts as a center guitar in kind of like a more metal hard rock mix. Like, obviously it's taking care of, you know, the low end as well, but it's kind of like filling in the low end of the guitars. A lot of people don't realize that really, like, your guitar tone should probably roll off the bass a bit more, even if it sounds kind of lame on its own, because the bass guitar needs to kind of sit and take up that range, you know?
Well, it's the bridge that connects everything.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's really the thing that, you know, rhythmically gives melody to your percussion and allows your real melodic and harmonic elements of the song to feel appropriate and to feel like they are attached to something bigger rather than just being a series of riffs.
Yeah.
And separate, you know, sections that you know, just sort of lead to nowhere. In my opinion, the bass is one of the most overlooked instruments for exactly that reason, when used appropriately.
I feel like, especially in kind of rock and metal, there's kind of that sentiment, because, I mean, whether you want to admit it or not, guitarists rule the rock and metal sphere, but they sometimes don't know when to give it up tone-wise, as far as, like, just letting the bass exist in this space sonically.
No, it's and a lot of times with music now, I mean, it's guitar driven, but when you just have a bass that is just a mimic of the guitar, you're doing a disservice to the song, to the listener, because there's so much that can be offered from that low end in a melodic sense. But if you overdo it, then, you know, people can tell. It's something
it's
where
definitely a balancing act for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and usually people only notice it if you're doing it wrong.
All right, so my next song is a pretty recent release by an artist called Western Jaguar, who is up in Canada. And I actually found this artist on Twitter a couple months ago, right around when their record released. They sent it to me. We're like, hey, check this out. And it's kind of funny. Like, the first time I listened to it, I was just not in the right mood for it. I was in the mood for something else, and I was like, I don't know if I'm into this. But the thing that I think is important when you're listening to and trying to discover music is to listen to new stuff in different moods, because it'll hit you differently. And so this, I listened to it again, you know, like a week later, and really liked it. It's some kind of like shoegazy indie bedroom pop type of stuff, and this song is called Better Days.